Data is the Retail, Grocery, Dairy and Allied Trades Association. Tara Buckley is a former journalist and political correspondent. She's a member of the government's Retail Consultation Forum and was a member of the advisory group on Ireland 2040, the National Planning Framework, and recently completed a second term as member of the National Oversight and Audit Commission. Tara Buckley, Director General, Data, you're very welcome this morning, and you're going to speak to us about Town Centre Revival.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to everyone involved for having me speak to you today. I'm really delighted to be part of this Innovation Week. Data is nearly 80 years old and has been around for a long time, representing independent grocers. My members are independent shops, convenience stores, forecourt stores and supermarkets based generally in town centres, village centres and neighbourhood centres all over Ireland. They are a significant contributor to their local communities. They are an important player in their local communities, and my members are local entrepreneurs who collectively employ over 90,000 people. So we are a significant employer and a very important part of local communities. The interesting thing is, I suppose, the challenges that have arisen over the last number of months. We were predicting some of them, so we had been meeting collectively with government to deal with Brexit, because obviously we knew it was going to be a significant impact on the retail sector. And when we got this March came and the country went into lockdown, I suppose the fact that we had already been meeting and talking about Brexit gave us a forum where we could immediately change our tack and look at COVID-19 and how we were going to deal with that. The very challenging thing for my members was that they were very much the essential retailers, and we had very little information really on when lockdown started. We were given health advice about social distancing, washing hands and wearing masks. And other than that, really, they had to turn their businesses around extremely quickly and start operating and just making sure their customers got their essential goods in a safe environment. And I really had to take my hat off them because, as Philomena said, the turnaround and the agility that they showed was amazing. And really, they had to become public health experts overnight. They had to make sure their staff were safe and their customers were safe. And they had to operate in very unusual times. And I know there were challenges at the beginning. Philomena mentioned the empty toilet roll shelves. But to be honest with you, we were very quick to turn that around. I suppose shopkeepers were getting ready for the normal March type of sales patterns, and these changed completely overnight. So I think you actually could take your hat to all of them, because we managed to sort out all of those logistics issues and sort out our shops so that we could organise them in a very safe manner. Now, unfortunately, I can't see my slides, so I'm not sure what you're looking at now, but thank you. I wanted to introduce you to some of my members. So let me quickly show you here. These are sort of people I represent. This is Peter Ward. He runs an artisan food shop in Neenah, and he's a very good example of the sort of passionate food and artisan retailer that Data represents. He's now, his wife Mary is involved in the business, and his two daughters, and they are involved in market stalls, festivals, other areas where they sell home-produced Irish food, and he's a fantastic advocate for that. The other types of members I have, hugely engaged in their local communities, great people at giving back. So, for example, an awful lot of my members would be part of local community groups, local community services. Here's Kieran Cotter from Baltimore and West Cork, and he's one of the significant members of the Baltimore lifeboat crew down there. And we would have members all over the country who are involved in the lifeboat crews. This is another example of the type of people I represent. That's the late Paddy Nolan there, surrounded by his sons and his grandchildren, and they run Nolan's in Clontarf. And although the independent sector has developed and moved through the years from 13,500 shops to around 3,500 shops now, they've dealt with every type of thing that's come across their paths. And for a lot, they've joined symbol groups and buying groups. But some who have run unique businesses like Nolan's have managed to stay non-aligned and still trade under their family name. But the vast majority of the RG Data members now would trade under a symbol group name or their family name. So we have a great choice of symbol groups here, and they have helped my members stay and still retain a third of the market share, which is a pretty amazing thing in terms of the independent sector. Ireland's independent sector would be much stronger than the independent sectors in other countries. So this is the other type of member, and as we heard Philomena mention the GAA, an awful lot of my members would be engaged in volunteering. This is Annie Timothy. She's a director of RG Data. She runs a supermarket in Abbeytown in Roscommon with her husband Vincent, and Annie was the manager of the local girls under 12 team and very engaged in her local community. And that link between local shopkeepers and local community groups really came to the fore when COVID-19 arrived. And I think we were the first off the mark and organising that link up with those community groups, and particularly the GAA, to make sure our vulnerable and cocooning customers were getting their goods. The RG Data has long been involved in the whole planning process in town centre regeneration, primarily, I suppose, because we understood the importance of an independent, family-owned grocery store as the heart of the community. And this is backed up by international research. Professor Kevin Layden over in Galway has done research right around the world, and it shows that communities with a locally owned food store at their core are better connected, healthier, the popular communities to live in, the places where people work together as a community. The other thing, we had Jim Power, the economist, did some work for us on the contribution that our members make. And collectively, the independent local shop is a significant contributor to Ireland's economy. And also the fact that the money you spend in a locally owned shop means much more to your local community. So it's called the multiplier effect. And €100 spent in a locally owned shop generates about €250 in your local economy. We're much more significant employers than the large multiples, and we have many families can make their living and work throughout their working careers in the local independent supermarket. We're also fantastic supporters of our local communities, sponsorships, community groups, and getting involved with local projects and causes. So really having a local independent shop is a huge benefit to a local community or a town or a village. And obviously, from our perspective, having a vibrant town or village centre is so important for our members and for the other businesses that operate around them and for their customers. And from the outset, maybe 20, 25 years ago, RG Data got very involved in planning because we understood that we needed good planning policy to ensure that we had vibrant towns and villages. And at that stage, I suppose, the biggest challenge we felt we were facing was the arrival of the large multiple that wanted to build outside the town. So we campaigned for retail planning guidelines, which were introduced over 20 years ago. And certainly they have helped us over the years to try and ensure that we had sustainable retail planning, that the shops were built in the retail core, that there was good competition, walkable shops, people could come in and go from shop to shop, and that was a much better delivery of services to a community than allowing shops to build outside the town or on greenfield sites away from the other stores and acting as a counter attraction to the town centre. And I suppose, over the years, we've been very actively engaged in trying to ensure that new stores, new shops come into the town centres and build on the vacant sites in the town centre. And operate in a competitive way with the other stores. But in more recent times, I suppose, we had seen that there were other challenges facing our town centres and our communities. And the key one now, I suppose, that had really arisen over the last number of years was the rise in vacancy and dereliction in our town centres. And this was before we had lockdowns and COVID. This was probably, a number of different challenges. Some where we'd seen the town centre hollowed out because of edge of town or out of town development. Some areas where online shopping or lack of engagement in the town centre not looking so inviting and not being as attractive as it had been in the past, and issues around parking, traffic. So many other issues were facing our town centres. And certainly we had seen, arriving in the last number of years, that this was a significant challenge that had to be addressed. And I suppose the last recession was had a very serious impact on the retail sector and on our town centres. And we saw a lot of businesses close, banks went from town centres, post offices closed, number of publicans, hotels, and we saw empty derelict sites in our town centres, and realised that to turn this around, something significant had to be done. And that's why RG Data and a number of others really worked hard to persuade the government to adopt a town centre first policy in its programme for government. And certainly we were delighted to see that the government took that on board and included it in our shared future. And I certainly would think that there was very good commitment, obviously, from all political parties, but I do think that it possibly was a great help to have the Green Party in that coalition government, because they really understood the need for this type of planning policy. So the town centre first policy really has to be applied across all the political activity. All the different departments have to commit to it, and all players in the marketplace have to commit to it. And really it means that all decisions and all investment decisions are based on a town centre first application. And there were other things have been in the programme for government that we would obviously welcome. There's more investment in the town and village renewal scheme. There's more investment in housing in town centres, investment in education, investment in healthcare, and investment in digital hubs. And really and truly, we need all of these to work together to try and transport and mobility. I think Philomena mentioned those as well. We need these all to work together so that we can ensure that we can regenerate and repurpose our town centres. One of the other areas that we had been very engaged in since 2015 was town centre health checks. I had gone to a conference that was run by the Heritage Council about town centre renewal, and we were still reeling from the impact of the last recession, and really trying to come together with different groups to see how could we regenerate our town centres, which were ailing at the time. And I met up with Alison Harvey, who was a planner working for the Heritage Council, and she had studied town planning, and she really explained to me how working together to regenerate a town required evidence-based data. And really, Ireland hadn't been good at collecting the evidence that you need if you want to really look hard at your town, your community, or your city centre and work out what needs to be done. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What's brilliant about your town centre? What doesn't work? So together, working with Alison and other people, a number of other collaborators, and we came up with the collaborative town centre health check. And this is now been included in the programme for government as one of the things the government has agreed needs to be rolled out. And we're delighted to see this, because aligning town centre policy with gathering the right evidence, gathering the right data, bringing together the people that need to be brought together to help regenerate a town. It's extremely challenging, But I certainly believe that the town centre health check, and particularly the collaborative town centre health check, provides that first place where you bring the people together, you have a blank sheet of paper, and you start all the interested parties working together with one goal, which is to revitalise, regenerate, repurpose their town or village or city centre. And obviously, this involves a variety of people, because town centres, to really work, need to address right across all the things that we do that make us happy, connected, engaged citizens. So it's not just about retail, it's not just about jobs in towns, it's not just about living in towns, it's about this whole concept of placemaking and making the place you live a place you're proud of, a place you want to visit, a place you want to create jobs, a place you want to start businesses, a place you want to go with your family, to meet your friends, to engage with your culture, to engage with sport, and to live, enjoy, and have a happy life. So we worked on a pilot to try and develop an Irish, adapt the best practice in the world in terms of town centre health checks and data collection, and adapt it to Irish towns and villages. And we worked together, and to be honest with you, this is the challenge: collaboration. It sounds wonderful and you think it's easy, but it's not. And it's very challenging. And I had come from representing local entrepreneurs, and we had seen towns where our members had got very engaged. They had recognised that the town centre had hollowed out. They knew that something needed to be done to address their town centre. And they may have sat down with others of a similar point of view, and they may have come up with ideas. So maybe it was, we'll have a Saturday market, or maybe it was, let's organise a festival, or let's organise an innovation week. And they would work hard and do this, and they'd have the event or the market or the festival, and then people would come and people would say, this is fantastic, this is great. But next week, the town would still have the same problems it had, and the people didn't come back. And they started to realise that to really generate a sense of place and a sense of making people more engaged and more involved in their towns, that they had to address some of the issues that these people were concerned about. So having a once-off wasn't going to fix it. And that's where the sitting down with the blank sheet of paper, with all of the collective interests, and deciding to do a collaborative town centre health check actually brings you from a starting point that everyone can get engaged in, and you can start really assessing your town and working out what needs to be done, what's here now, what do we need, and how can we make this a better place, and working collectively with expert advice. So, and business people and entrepreneurs, I knew, in a way I can see that the challenges of bringing them together with public servants and bringing them together with citizenship, because a lot of us, we have different agendas, we think differently. An entrepreneur who runs a business is used to making a decision and making it happen, while a person who's working in the public service realises that there are a lot more hoops that they have to jump through to deliver or to make something happen. So it's the challenges of bringing all those different types together, because we had one shared goal, and that was to regenerate and repurpose our town centres. So the collaborative town centre health check, to me, the reason that we got so engaged was that the alternative was grim. We were looking at towns that were, very high vacancy rates. Vacancy rates, according to the sort of experts in town planning that I've been watching and listening to, and even looking at EU counterparts, vacancy rates should be around 5-6%. That's a sort of sign, maybe 4-5-6%, where there's turnover, there's a few vacant places, it keeps the place ticking over. In Ireland, we were seeing vacancy rates in our towns of 18%, 20%, 26%. These are red light vacancy rates, where if you don't do something drastic, your town is going into decline and you may not be able to bring it back. And we realized that something drastic had to be done. So with the collaborative approach, we have, over the last number of years, we started with a pilot. The minister we were dealing with was Damien English, who was urban planning at the time. And we had a big conference in Dublin Castle where we brought all the interested parties together, and we started on a pathway. And the challenge, I suppose, that we learned from Alison's expertise, we developed the best we had understood about town centre health checks into a 15-point collaborative town centre health check. And we made sure we brought on board different collaborators and experts, so architects, planners, landscape architects, transport experts, all of these people. And instead of working in silos, which is sort of a thing we do in Ireland, and it's a challenge that we need to be brought back together and try and all work together. That is the key challenge. The other area that I suppose we noted was that for a lot of these aspects of regenerating town centres, you're not only dealing with, one government department, you're dealing with several government departments. And, government departments have a way of operating within their budgets and, allocating their budgets. And it is challenging to bring them together and share the allocation of the budget and work together under one town centre first policy. That is a challenge, and it's something I certainly believe we have to grasp if we're going to be successful in regenerating our towns. So the programme started, and a number of towns, and probably one of the first towns to really come through the programme was Tralee. And the fantastic thing was that within a year of doing its collaborative town centre health check, Tralee won the most enterprising town in Ireland. And it as a key indicator that if you can bring people together and you can get them working together and you can collect the evidence and the data and start really looking at the town and understanding what the challenges are, and then using the investment wisely and putting it into shovel-ready projects that from the data you've collected will start to make a difference. So that was a fantastic start to this town centre health check programme. Some of the other things in the town centre health check that I think are fantastic for any town. We used to call them shopper surveys, but in fact we started to realise that this wasn't just about shopping. And even at that, even though I knew my members as independent food retailers were still going to be in the town centre, people were still going to come. We call it now bricks and clicks retailers. Our members have to have an online presence. They have to have delivery services. They have to have people have to be able to see them and see what they have, and they have to do a lot of marketing and dealing on social media to ensure their customers know about them and their offers. But people in general still will come, for a vast majority of people still will come to a bricks and mortar food convenience store. And as long as you can provide theatre and entertainment and a fantastic experience, they will still come to a bricks and mortar store. So we were looking at, trying to ensure that other retailers in the core could develop their offering to ensure that they kept their customers coming. And instead of calling it the shopper survey, it became just the citizen survey. And the citizen survey asked people about their shopping habits, about their visiting the town habits, what they liked about the town, what they don't like about the town, what would make them come more, what they would like to see more of. And some of the interesting things that come out of doing these type of surveys and talking to the people who are actually living, working, or visiting the town is that, you get the truth, you get the hard facts. If they don't like the traffic flow, if they don't like where they have to park, if they don't like the lack of pedestrian crossings, or if they don't like the tattiness, or if they think the pavements are cracked, or if they think that there aren't enough coffee places, or there's nowhere nice to have lunch, or there's nowhere to sit with your family, or there's nothing for your children to do. Suddenly you see in all the hard facts about your town. But they also tell you the things they like and what they would do. And for example, in Tralee, the shops there were traditionally opening 9 to 5, and they were worried because, the footfall was dropping. What were they going to do? And when they did the surveys, the customer said, something, I would come into town with my friends on a Thursday or a Friday evening. And if I was in meeting them, I need more places I can go that are like coffee bars or smoothie bars that are open. And also, if there were shops around them that I would like to go with my friends and have some experience. So I might go to a vintage clothes shop, or I might go to somewhere with unusual things, so that I would go and it would be part of my night out with my friends. So the shops started to realize that, sometimes they'd have to rethink the opening times. Maybe they didn't need to open on Monday morning, and maybe they needed to open on Thursday and Friday evening. It also was about the types of businesses in the town and what the town needs. The businesses do a survey and talk about their attitudes, their experience of the town. You also do footfall surveys, and you also do a survey of the buildings in the town, the ownership of the buildings, and you look at mapping that. And we didn't have a system of mapping in Ireland at the time, so we've developed that system with some of the local authorities. Mayo County Council developed an app that could be used to go around and do the building surveys. As part of doing the building surveys, we learned who is the business owner, what was, where the vacancies were, got information and data that, people hadn't known before, or had been too challenging to try and find it. So it was impossible then to try and reorganize towns when you don't even know who owns some of the buildings, or, why they're vacant. One of the other things that we really learned that was very interesting was that a lot of time we have schemes and things to revitalise, so living over the shop schemes, or grants for doing up a building, or grants for changing something. But when you do something all on its own in the town centre, that doesn't necessarily change the feeling of the town or the vibrancy of the town. And certainly in two of the towns that did the collaborative town centre health check, they were in Tralee. They realised that Denny Street had vacancy in all the top 2 floors in that street, a beautiful Georgian street. And they realised they were never going to fix it unless they got all the business owners together to do a revamp of the street together. Up in Monaghan, the same thing. Dublin Road, Monaghan, they realised no point just doing 1 or 2 or leaving it up to 1 or 2 business owners to try and develop it. They needed to bring them all together, sit them down, and try and work together to make an application for grant aid to do a complete revamp of the entire street. In some cases, what you need to put into those empty buildings. So in Denny Street, they realised it was an opportunity maybe for small office spaces. You see this, this idea of living over the shop, but a lot of people, you have to really adapt the buildings to make them attractive for people to come back and live in them. But there's most definitely an opportunity to do that and get footfall and breathe life back into the town. Public realm was another one that, people gave their comments and their thoughts, and a lot of information was gathered in terms of how they could address public realm to make it more attractive. And a lot of local authorities would tell you that public realm sometimes can be a very cost-effective way of showing your town and your town team that you're started on a path, and your people immediately see a difference. So even investing in public space, certainly down in all the towns that did the town centre health check, things like painting schemes, windows, looking at planting, all of those things can be done quite quickly and at the start of the process, while you're dealing with the more challenging projects that need to be done. And they get people a sense of achievement. They bring the group together, and they make people realise we can do this if we all work together and start ticking down the box of all the things we've decided we need to do. Then you're looking at the nighttime economy. You're looking at crime and the feeling of safeness in your town. You're looking at, the services in the town. So sometimes it can be, if a town has a fantastic school, that can be a fantastic driver for vibrancy in the town, because people want their children to go to that school. They bring the children to school and they come in and use the businesses in the town. So that creates vibrancy. Primary care and healthcare is another way of addressing that need in your town, so that people come in for their appointments and use the town and congregate. Heritage, we have beautiful heritage buildings in our towns. Some of the buildings, for example, that the banks left are beautiful buildings that need to be repurposed and used and create spaces that people will want to come into to use. Also, even in terms of organising quarters in the town, where you have the heritage quarter, or you've looked at your town and realised that there's some historical significance of parts of your town, and how can you develop that and make it into something that people want to come and visit. So the great thing about the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check is that it brings all of these elements together, and it sets out the data, the evidence, all of those different surveys that have been done between the businesses and the others, and you've suddenly got a very good picture of where your town is today and where your town could be if you did certain things to try and address the concerns and issues that were raised. It also means that you've brought together the various interests from the town, and when you want to do things like address transport, cycle lanes, you have a platform to bring people along with you. Because I can see from my members are traditionally, they've been there in the town centre operating. They would have had a lot of issues with parking, car parking charges, things like that. They may have a sparky relationship with their local authority, and suddenly they're told this is going one way, or the bikes are going across the frontier, or you're losing 3 car parking spaces outside your store, and their backs get up. If it's a more collaborative, joined up approach, you bring them with you. And a lot of times, I know down in Westport, they wanted to pedestrianise the main street, and the architect in the town said everyone was against it. So what they did is they had a weekend where they brought in trees in barrels, they closed it for the weekend, and they gave people a sample of what it could be like if they went to a much more pedestrian route, and prioritising the people walking rather than the cars driving through the town. And a lot of our towns have this challenge, and it's a challenge because businesses that are already struggling and seeing low footfall feel even more challenged if you start changing things that they think, well, at least that bit's working. But, we all understand, and I know anybody I've seen who are the gurus of vibrant, walkable town centres say that we all have to swallow hard and look at the way we deal with cars, traffic and parking, and manage that in a much better way to prioritise pedestrians and cycling. And I think when towns work together and understand what will happen if they change things, how it will improve the footfall, I think then you bring them on board. But I think if it's just landed and they're not consulted and they feel like you're making changes that they have had no input into, then I think that creates a problem. The great thing about coming up with the collaborative town plan is that you get buy-in then, because people feel they have been consulted and they've been asked about it. And also, obviously, what we'd like to see is that this would happen you'd decide we'll do this every 2 years. So you then also have a way of checking back to see if the projects that you've decided to prioritise and move on to, and you've started doing them, and you can see when you go back and look at your data and your footfall, you can see, are they working? Has it made a difference? Is our town more vibrant? Are our citizens happier? Are they more engaged? Are they coming in here more? Are they using the town services more? My biggest concern, and I was so delighted to see the government put the town centre first policy into the programme for government. I think the next move is a working group will be established on town centre first. And I know that at the moment, I think the heads of all the various different government departments are already starting to come together to see how they're going to roll this out. My biggest concern is that, we had our biggest budget ever announced the week before last, and the reality is we're still announcing grants and funding in silos, and that's would be one of my biggest concerns, because it's clear that if you don't do it in a joined up way, you can end up wasting money. Once off projects, okay, let's go here, let's revamp this beautiful heritage, castle. But if you do that on its own and you don't revitalize the town and you don't address those sort of day-to-day niggles that are stopping people coming in, creating jobs there, coming in to meet their friends, coming in to shop there, coming in to engage there, well then it's not going to work. So you have to make sure that there's an overview and that town centre first policy is thought of before you start spending money on individual scattergun type approach to projects. So that would be my concern. It is fantastic to see the amount that the government has ring-fenced for the type of projects that will make a significant difference to our town centres. But the cautionary word is, from watching this for the last 15 years, is that you really need that evidence-based and that joined-up thinking to make sure that you don't just spend a lot of money and you end up disappointed in the outcome at the end of it all. So, certainly there has been a way of doing business in Ireland where local authorities follow the money, and it's your town's turn to get a grant this year, and it's your town's. We really need to see towns doing a health check, coming up with a plan, and then it being an evidence-based. Well, this town has a shovel-ready project. We know that this is what's required to deliver on this outcome, and this is where we're going to put the money. The other area that I think is very interesting here, that was a real highlight of the collaborative town centre health checks, was that one of the people that we got involved with was the higher education, the third level students. So it's not cheap doing surveys and doing footfall counting and building surveys, but we tapped in through the collaborative town centre health check. The Heritage Council tapped into the third level institutions. So the people, it was fantastic. UCD, Queen's University Belfast, Tralee Institute of Technology, Sligo IT, all of the different third level institutions got involved as part of their students' programme. And they got involved in working with the town team on the collaborative town centre health check. And it depended on the third level institution, but there were architect students, there were marketing students, there were business students, there were town planning students, and the engagement was fantastic because you had a young set of eyes coming in and looking at most of them were people who lived in that town or were living in the town because they were students there. And it was the feedback from those young people going in and saying, I never looked at the streetscape before. I never thought about the public realm before. And the ideas that they came up with were fantastic. And some of those ideas would absolutely change the way we'd live in towns. And they were looking at the night, thinking themselves that, well, I only ever come in because I go to, a smoothie bar and I meet my friends, or I go to do a little bit of shopping here, but I never go there. And they thought about the links in the town, what would make them go from place to place. They thought about open air and places where they would come and do things with their friends if certain things were on and if the facilities were there. And really good ideas. Like, we all know in Ireland, we were lucky at the start of the pandemic that the weather was so good, but now we have to congregate outside. Some of the ideas that these students came up with in terms of public realm space and making it more usable, types of overhanging umbrella style seating, and really good ideas around how you could make our town centres much more usable and make them more attractive to come into, and also make them usable in all weathers. So, they really did put their thinking hats on and come back. You can also use active retirement groups to do some of this work in the town. And once again, you're getting another perspective and engaging others. The tidy townspeople are usually very engaged in this because they are people who are very engaged in their towns and making them attractive and working. And they really understand the nuts and bolts of what the town needs to do, because they're the ones who have been picking up the litter and sorting out the issues around making the town attractive all over the years. So it's been very, very interesting to have worked on this project, and certainly it made me realize that if we want to regenerate our cities, our towns, it's about that collaboration, bringing people together, starting with that blank sheet of paper, doing a collaborative town centre health check, going through the 15-point plan, and working together to address the issues that can make the difference. So I want to just quickly give you a couple of just some examples, because they just show you that there's a huge interest in doing this, and there are fantastic entrepreneurs out there, and I just know the ones who are independent shopkeepers. But this is a member of mine in Croom in County Limerick, and they've set up Croom Enterprise Association because they understood you needed a body to work to try and focus all its attention on the town. It's a bit like the bid system, but this is a slightly different way of doing it. And this is Pádraig Broderick, and he's going to invest in his shop, which is right in the centre of Croom. But he is very concerned about the vacancy and dereliction around him. And he so wants to try and encourage more people to come back in and operate in that town. There's a very busy pharmacy, that's a very busy Spar store, and he thinks there are opportunities in Croom. The Business Association has worked on primary care and other areas, and Croom is a fantastic place to live for somebody now, and what it needs is some more entrepreneurs to come in and work with them to try and revitalise those empty spaces in the town centre. And that's like hairdressers, cafes, quirky shops, all of that type of thing, which makes your town unique and individual and a place that people want to go. Another member of mine, who many of you probably will have heard of because they were the first, the Ludgate Hub in Skibbereen. And there on the picture you can see John Field, and he is the owner of Field SuperValu in Skibbereen, and a fantastic advocate for his town centre. And he recognised that, a lot of my members would say, nobody's going to do this, we've got to do it for ourselves. And he got together with leading business people who he knew came because of his shop. He knew they came to Skibbereen. He knew they had either lived or had holiday homes in the area. And he got them to work together to develop the Ludgate Hub. And you've seen the government has put money in the budget because they recognise that this is an important aspect of revitalising town centres, having a place where people can come and work. So, there are fantastic local independent shopkeeper entrepreneurs out there who want to get engaged in revitalising their town centres. They live in the towns, their families live in the towns, they are very invested in their towns. And I think if we can bring them together with the experts, with the local authorities, and develop the collaborative town centre health check. So I would be asking the government to put in a national oversight body to manage the rollout of the collaborative town centre health checks and to assist the various government departments in bringing together all of the aspects of the funding and the grant schemes and the different types of planning schemes and policies to try and help us all work together in a collaborative way to deliver town centre regeneration. Thank you very much.
Tara Buckley, Director General, RG Data. Thank you very much. Tara, I think every county, town and city got a mention there. So that was, I'm sure they're all delighted. I suppose, Tara, one thing that jumps out is like the independent store and the SME, they really are the backbone of the Irish economy. But they're not only the backbone of the Irish economy, they are, I suppose, a location where someone can come in, do their shopping, someone will know your name. They'll ask a few words, they'll engage, and that's very important. So it's not just, I suppose, economy, but it's also community as well, and that's really important at this point in time.
No, you're absolutely right. And to be honest with you, I suppose COVID-19 has hopefully made local people value that local community resource that is the independent food shop. And, the owners are on the floor. They have been dealing with this issue. They've been greeting the customers, reassuring the customers, reassuring the staff. It's been a really challenging time, but the one thing is I really believe it has once again highlighted the absolute value of having a local independent retailer in your town rather than just having sort of multiples and clone town. Having unique independent businesses and shops gives your town just the edge.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think in Sandyford Business District, I think we have the blend right. We've multinationals, SMEs, independent stores, so it's still functioning, as a community, which is great to see. Look, we're a resilient bunch. We've proven that time and time and time again over the years. Every cloud has a silver lining. That's not taking away how serious the pandemic is. But we'll see many, many new entrepreneurs. I've even seen myself, retail units or commercial units that have been vacant for many months or many years. People are now taking a punt. They're going, look, I've possibly lost my job or see an opportunity, and they're backing themselves, and it's those risk takers that make a difference.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, the biggest risk taker will be the person who is so invested in that community. So, and you can see that when you're looking at the impact of COVID-19 or you look at the impact of the last recession. It was the local businesses, the local hoteliers, the local publicans, the local shopkeepers. They want to get their businesses back up and running. They are so invested in their local community. They, as you said yourself, they know their customers, they know the value of their business to the town, and they are also sharing in using the facilities of the town, and it's absolutely they want them to be the best that they can be. So it's a great way of having the right type of people at the table trying to really work together to try and regenerate and repurpose.
Tara Buckley, Director General RG Data, thank you very much for joining us. You're going to hang around for a while.